Coming into this hour of In the Groove with Ron Trent's remix of Afronaut, Ash Walker, and of course, the vocals of the late, great Amp Fiddler. Such a beautiful musical tree that Amp Fiddler has here in the Motor City. A lot of music that we simply would not have without his role as an absolute godfather. And I'm talking a lot about Amp Fiddler because tonight kicks off very special events. Giles Peterson and friends over at Spot Lite all week long with this really cool showcase of multi-generational Detroit talent, starting tonight with that tribute to Amp Fiddler presented by Des Andreas. And speaking of Giles Peterson, if you're not familiar with that name, legendary radio broadcaster, DJ, producer, label head. He's kind of done it all. I know him from BBC Radio 6 Music. That's where I first discovered his show. And he has truly become a radio hero of mine. You also know him from Worldwide FM and truly just as an advocate for underground music that you're not going to get played anywhere else. And that's something that we could definitely get behind here on In the Groove. Really excited to welcome Giles Peterson live into our studios. Giles, welcome.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here. It's great to be here. It's good to actually drive in and listen to the radio as we're driving in because it feels like it's natural in this environment, Detroit, listening to music. You were playing Cocorocco, actually, which was really weird because we put that out last year.
Yeah.
And they've just actually been touring in the States. They've just done Coachella, and so they're doing their first proper tour of America at the moment. But yeah, no, it's great to be here. It's lovely. It's been a while since I was in Detroit. A long while. It's been at least 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I was saying to you earlier on, the first time I came here, because I ran a record label called Acid Jazz, and I ran a label called Talking Loud. And when I had Talking Loud, one of the groups that I had, it was a UK-based label. We had artists like Omar on it and Young Disciples, Galliano, and there was a group called Incognito that was on the label. And we were doing okay, but we weren't kind of having big hits in the UK. Just breaking even every year. We were like owned by a major label at the time, which was Universal. And so every year was like, have we had a crossover act? And it was always a bit tricky. One might do quite well in England or in Germany or something. And then suddenly Incognito had a hit in America, and it was a song called Deep Waters with May Salik, who was actually Stevie Wonder's ex-singer. She joined them, and suddenly I got a call saying, Giles, you got a hit in America, you got to come and see Incognito, it's going to be massive. And I was like, where is it? They said it's in Detroit, because of course I thought hit in America was like all over America, but it was in certain cities,
in the pockets.
But it was big enough. Detroit was big enough to be able to, to mean kind of big stuff for a small English label. So I came all the way to Detroit, and I saw them performing, and it was in a stadium, and I couldn't believe it. It wasn't 200 people in a jazz club. It was like 15,000 people who knew all the words. So that was my first moment here in Detroit, seeing one of my groups.
The phrase you really used was Detroit saved me.
And it inevitably, and it did save me, because at that time the label was kind of, on the edge of just going under, and that impetus and energy that we got from the success of the group, and then that went on to them really doing very well over here in the States. That allowed me much new budget to sign a next generation of artists, including Masters at Work on the project called New Reconsole, including Carl Craig and his project in his own orchestra from Detroit, and including a bunch of UK drum and bass acts like Ronnie Size Represents and Four Hero, a Four Hero group that were very influenced by underground resistance here. So it gave my label Talking Loud an impetus and wait to come again kind of thing, and we got into the next phase. So yeah, I'm still friends with Bluey Incognito. In fact, I have a project with him called Strata, and we did 2 albums, one during the pandemic, and it's kind of celebrating Brit funk music, which is a very interesting little period of music that happened between sort of 78 and 82 in the UK, which is when most people had their eyes on punk music. And while that was going on, there was all these kind of British, mainly black groups who were making a kind of version of American funk, but they were doing it UK style, so it's a little bit more DIY and a little bit more raw, and actually with time it sounds really fresh. And so groups like High Tension, Light of the World, Incognito, all these groups came from that freeze. And so we made a record recently, well, we've done 2 albums actually, as a group called Strata, named similarly to the Detroit label.
Yes.
But we have a 4 instead of an A in Strata.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
Cheeky.
Yes, exactly. But it's great to be here.
You know, I think that's kind of a good place to start because, you know, here in Detroit, we love ourselves. You know, like Detroit is very proud of Detroit and what we export. We always say on this show, Detroit makes it, the world takes it. But I'm curious, from your seat over in London and being part of music for so long, talk to me about that reputation that Detroiters have and Detroit musicians have around the globe, because I think sometimes locally we don't understand how big what we make is to the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it kind of, I think it probably, well, first of all, we have to talk about people like Yusef Lateef and people like Donald Byrd in the world of jazz, who are obviously Detroit natives, and labels like Strata and people like Marcus Belgrave on the jazz side, obviously globally Motown and all the soul music that was kind of around that. But for me, a really key person is the Electrifying Mojo, because of course when you talk to Jeff Mills or Juan Atkins or Carl Craig, and they all say, well, actually the reason we had that taste was because we were hearing something different on the radio. It was eclectic, and he was putting all these different styles together. So I think that's a really important part of what made techno interesting and different, somehow, for me anyway. And just when you look at the influences that you hear in that music, it's so wild, it's so free and avant-garde. It's really, you know, it's lasted, it's tested. The time has made it sound even better as it goes along. So the other thing about Detroit is that there's a mystery about it, you know. It's kind of, and that's exciting as well. That's interesting. It's like, how do you get into it? It's like, it is a little bit like you've got to prove yourself for people to take you seriously, either side. So for me, as someone who's sort of meeting a lot of these musicians, whether it's Kenny Dixon, whether it's Theo Parrish, and all these people, they're not just going to just come and do the gig. They're going to have to find out who you are. They check you out. You know?
It's a bit of a vetting system.
Yeah. So, you know, and I think that's evidently because there's a pride to the music. You can't just get it. You know, it's for sale almost. It's kind of like, it's art.
Yeah.
And for that reason, you know, it has depth and, you know, on every level.
And you've done a big portion of the lifting of representing Detroit music in London and beyond. I feel like every time I'm listening to your show, there's always Detroit artists on that playlist. I love one time talking about Theo Parrish. He said, Theo Parrish is always years ahead. We're not going to understand this record for another couple of years. Right. And I love that sort of broadcasting that and getting that music out to the people. There's still a lot of power in radio still to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. I mean, you were playing Amp Fiddler, you know, so sad that we lost him. Was it early this year? Well, you know, we lost him. And
late last year.
Yeah, late last year. And such an iconic artist and connector and communicator and cultural ambassador for this place and for the music. And he's somebody who actually, I've only ever done 2 sessions at Maida Vale. So Maida Vale is the special studio that you get to use if you work at the BBC, which sadly is going to be closing down the next year. It's like state-owned studio where the Beatles went and everybody recorded some great sessions. John Peel, who is one of my sort of idols, radio broadcaster from the UK, he did sessions there all the time, and I get the chance now as one of the BBC people to put people in Maida Vale, where you get the BBC engineers and the nice equipment and everything, and people love going there. And I've only done 2 sessions with 3 people. One of them was Amp Fiddler. Amp Fiddler came twice because he was so special, right? And he just wanted to come and play there. And so, you know, whether it was his connection to George Clinton, whether it was his connection to Dwele, to the whole Dilla Foundation, bringing him his equipment and mentoring him, Amp Fiddler is a key player in Detroit history for me, and again, this is somebody who went across the genres, so you could hear him sort of sing in a more traditional soul way, in a funk way, around hip hop, or within the house context, and again, that is Detroit for me. It's about feeling that you can just kind of, there aren't really categories. Everything can just mold and we just create. And I think Amp was certainly, you know, a very important part of that philosophy.
Yeah, genre doesn't really matter anymore. Good music does. That's kind of the idea. Amp Fiddler, a huge part of that. And we're talking now with Giles Peterson, getting ready for a tribute to Amp Fiddler tonight at Spot Lite. This is part of Giles Peterson and Friends all week long at Spot Lite. This really great showcase of the sound of Detroit, not just what it sounds like today, but sort of the masters of the music here will be there. Carl Craig, John Dixon, all those cats. But tonight it's about Amp Fiddler. It's going to be presented by Des Andreas. Incredible percussionist, incredible DJ. Definitely, I think, the best DJ in this town. And worked with Amp Fiddler quite a bit. Listen to this lineup that's happening tonight, 9 o'clock at Spotlight. Des Andreas, Shigeto on drums, Ian Fink on keys, Tall Black Guy on keys. You got Dames Brown doing vocals, Monica Blair, and so much more. This is going down tonight, a tribute to Amp Fiddler, presented by Des Andreas, part of Giles Peterson and his residency this week at Spotlight. I want to get into some music from Des right now. This is kind of the classic. You're still the one in the groove here on WDET. I would know the sound of those keys anywhere. That is Detroit's own John Dixon. Music from Norm Talley's label, Upstairs Asylum. Huge thanks to Norm for sending over the entire catalog for us to be able to play here in the groove. Because Norm makes it a little tough to find sometimes. So I appreciate you, Norm, for sending that stuff over. Playing some music from Detroit's own John Dixon, because tomorrow night at Spotlight, Carl Craig and John Dixon, Detroit Love, the live experience. It's part of a showcase that Giles Peterson has been putting together, legendary broadcaster, DJ, producer, label head. Am I missing anything, Giles?
I've been spending a lot of time putting festivals together recently, to be honest with you. That's the thing that's taken up a lot of my brain space of late. But yeah, no, I'm pretty much... I think it's funny because you're always sort of thinking, which bit can I kind of just do less of? But in a way, for it to work for me, I need to do a bit of all of it to get a sense of it. We were talking ourselves just now because obviously you do this 5 days a week, and it's amazing. And sometimes for me, certainly being able to play out and combine that with playing on the radio, those two things kind of work, because you get that energy that you get from being out there and seeing the audience responding, as well as doing the radio. So I've always found myself very much doing radio and club DJing. From way at the beginning when I was 15, I had 2 decks and a microphone, and then I got a transmitter and I created my own pirate radio station, which was quite a big thing.
I love that.
In the UK.
Well, the relationship with radio here in the United States, very different thing than radio over in London, right? It's a whole different system.
Yes. Well, in a way there's more stations here, but in a way there's more stations now in the UK because, or there were up until the birth of sort of online radio, which has suddenly put another layer of choice into people's selection. But pirate radio certainly is one of the reasons I think that so many underground scenes have been able to find particular audiences in the UK. You know what the UK is really good at? The UK is already, if you want wine and you want the best distributors of wine in the world, it's the UK distributor. They don't make wine, but what they do, they're very good at curating wine. And the UK is also very good at curating music, because we kind of can check out the difference between what's going on in Detroit, what's going on in Chicago. Now, I always found that, for example, when I was coming to New York and Detroit back in the day, I'd be going to see Francois Kevorkian or Louis Vega at their clubs in New York, but they didn't know a bunch of the Detroit DJs. There was no exchange. They didn't know what was going on. They were just so in their world. And I think what's good with where we come from, certainly as curators in the UK, I feel, is that we're sort of tasting a bit of everything, and we can kind of almost try and glue it all together. And perhaps that's really been my aim as a broadcaster, to try and kind of just join the dots between the different styles of music, the different places, and to kind of make those exchanges happen. And again, with the festivals, it's the same thing, really, trying to do that so that, I always get a little bit sort of, not upset, But I think that festivals are so straightforward and very strict into what they're meant to be. This is a jazz festival. This is an electronic music festival. Put the two together.
Absolutely. And here in the States, the issue is that a lot of the major festivals just kind of feel like copycats of one another and just end up being regional deposits of the big names at the moment.
Yeah.
There's discovery there, but you'd have to get the magnifying glass out to read the fine print on the flyer for the festival.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. So, I think and I think with the way people are so much more able to kind of discover and be more curious about music quicker these days, I think people's tastes are more sophisticated. And I think that festivals need to be more sophisticated and radio stations need to be more sophisticated in how they put music together. The old-fashioned lowest common denominator might work at a certain point, but actually there's a huge tranche of people who don't want that. And they love the idea of mixing Sun Ra with Frank Zappa with Jeff Mills. They love it.
We've seen that here in the Groove. People seem very happy to have music back in the middays and bringing in Wajid to do his show. That's tonight at 8 o'clock, or Shigeto, or Liz Warner, all these people that have been really critical to music discovery here. It still plays such a powerful role for music discovery, and I'm curious if you can kind of talk about that in a world where you're bombarded with so many choices. How does that still have that magic feeling? Like, why is that power still there? That curation means so much for people.
I think it's meaning more than it did even 2 years ago. I just think that there is so much noise. There is so much choice. We've all had, anything at our fingertips. It's like, I can't make that choice anymore. I just need to go to people who can kind of take me through it. So I do believe that if you can master your art and you say what we do as presenters and curators, you cannot sleep doing our job. That's the other thing, So for me, I can't take a break. It's like being a chef. You have to go at the market. If you want to have a good restaurant, you need to know where the best produce is on a daily level. And for us as DJs or as producers or as curators, you can't go, oh no, I'm just going to just not get into music for 3 weeks and people just follow me. You can't do that, And again, that's why I think being in London, probably similar here in Detroit in that sense, people are quick to go, he's lost it. So, but I think if you can maintain, your authenticity, and people believe that, then I think that's people want to be led in that way.
That's what I had to admit to you, Giles, when you came in here. I said, you got me through the pandemic. All those long walks on Belle Isle, that's all we did, was just walk endlessly, listen to music. And it got to a point of just, when you've got everything at your fingertips, you can have whatever you want whenever you want. Kind of like the chef analogy, when you get a little too full and food stops tasting good. I needed that curation, and having someone kind of walk you through this stuff, you're learning about it, you're hearing stuff, you're hearing puzzle pieces go together that you didn't think could go together. And one song becomes 5 songs, and it just keeps connecting these neurons and kind of changing the way you think about music.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Thank you. I found that I had a role during a difficult time for the entire world. And I was able to, go down the road to my studio and every morning reflect as I walked across the park, and I could broadcast and, directly reflect. I think the other problem with a lot of radio at that time was a lot of radio became actual virtual radio, or people were pre-recording radio. For me, I was doing 5 days on Worldwide FM every morning, and then on a Saturday I was actually doing the BBC show, and a lot of the presenters couldn't come in or wouldn't want to come in anymore. So literally they gave me 4 hours every Saturday. So I'd be going into the centre of London. It was like ghost town. like it is here sometimes, but like an old Detroit downtown back in the day. And I'd be going on there and I'd be sort of doing live radio. And I think that was really, really important at that time because people did want to connect. Community was more important than ever at that time. So, and that is again what radio does, which you do not get from podcasts. You do not get that from Spotify. You do not get that from that. You get it. This is why radio is so important at a time when there's just so much bombardment of stuff. So to be able to kind of connect community-wise through music, I think radio in that sense will always live.
We're talking with Giles Peterson live here on In the Groove. Giles Peterson, legendary radio broadcaster, curator, DJ, and lots more. He's finally back in Detroit after, 20 some odd years? Is that right?
Been a good while. It's been a good while.
And he didn't come slacking at all. He's got so much stuff that's going on at Spot Lite tonight with that tribute to Amp Fiddler. Carl Craig, John Dixon, and a whole cast of cats that are going to be playing on Thursday. Me and Giles are going to be doing talking on the airwaves, talking about radio, talking about Giles' career, and kind of an expanded talk of what we're doing right now on Friday at Spotlight 2. I'm really looking forward to this. That's going to be at 6 o'clock, completely free. I hope a lot of people come out, hang out. I'd love to meet people. I know Giles would love to meet people as well. And then later that night on Friday, this is really, really cool. It's called Next Gen. Kicks off at 9 o'clock. And these are sort of, I would say, like the next cats up. Is that how you're looking at this when we see Shigeto, Tammy Lakis, Mefta, Dion Jamar, Simone, Keswa? I love Keswa. She was a very early guest on the show. Is that how you're looking at it? Like some of the people, we need to be paying attention to these talents.
I mean, I don't know some of these. So this is where Ruler and Jesse came to my rescue. I knew some of the new names. Some of them weren't available. Some of them were. And exactly, again, in our role as curators or radio hosts, it's important to make sure that there's always room for the next generation to come through. That's where things go wrong in the past. That's where the institutions have held stuff back. And I think that, again, there's always a next wave and they tend to inspire you. And so I'm looking forward to listening to what's going to come through on Friday, from a lot of these people. Of course, Shigeto, he's not such a new name. He's been around for some time. But, it's going to be great.
And we love him here on WDET, his show. The new music show on Saturdays is wonderful. But one of the names that really popped off on this list was Dion Jamar, who's got a new record coming out. It's called Altars. And Dion Jamar sent over some unreleased stuff not out in the world quite yet. You can catch him on Friday at Spotlight, and you can hear it here first on In the Groove. Yeah, that one's definitely going in the heavy rotation here on In the Groove. Dion Jamar. He's got a new record that's going to be coming out on May 17th. His debut album, actually. First release for Black Music. Out worldwide on May 17th. Shout out to Dion for sending those tracks over early so you can get an addiction early to that stuff before it even comes out here on In the Groove on WDET. Coming to you live from the Cast Corridor in the best music city on the planet. I'm Ryan Patrick Hooper. Joined in studio by a true radio hero of mine, Giles Peterson, who's in town all week long, hanging out at Spotlight, curating a crazy lineup of stuff. A tribute to Amp Fiddler tonight, Carl Craig and John Dixon taking that Detroit love and making it live with an incredible band, including Kassan Belgrave, continuing that musical tradition, one of the greatest Detroit music families of all time, and lots more. Very, very excited about that. And Giles, you're going to be spinning too. You're doing 5 hours on Saturday night.
Exactly. I need that. I can't just do these 60-minuters. I mean, I do if I have to, but evidently I've been doing this for quite a while and I've been through many different phases in terms of some generations have heard me because of acid jazz, so they want to hear me play Jamiroquai and the brand new heavies and that kind of stuff. Other people want to hear me play rare grooves and rare soul, which is another bit of it. Other people want to hear me play jazz. Some people want to hear me play like electronic music. Some people want to hear me play drum and bass. Then I do a lot of travels around the world, so I've done records in Cuba and in Brazil, so there's people who want to hear that. You can't do that in 60 minutes, so it's a journey. And so 5 hours is generally what I need. Quite a few of us go to Japan a lot to DJ, and that's really where you'll hear a lot of the Detroit legends and a lot of the New York legends going over to play, and whether it's Joe Clauzel or Theo Parrish, and you'll go to the clubs and they'll start at midnight and they generally go on till midday, so it's a 12-hour thing. And I'm into that vibe if I can. I'm sure that you get that here as well, right? A lot of the DJs, I think Theo likes to play from dusk till dawn, that kind of thing.
Well, I think my favorite thing is the if you're gonna have the 12-hour party, I can't think of someone doing a straight 12 hours here, but when the sun comes up in Detroit and you got a good DJ on, say maybe Tammy Lackus, it's a beautiful thing, absolute beautiful thing. Or some of the cats that'll just start playing gospel when the sun starts coming up and kind of like cooling you down, cooling your brain down after working the dance floor all night. Yeah. What do you got to think about when you're doing 5 hours? You say in 60 minutes you can't transition through all these different places and styles.
I find you have to be a lot more organized when you're playing 60 minutes. So you need to kind of almost like knock it out the park and just do the job and keep the promoter happy and give everybody a real kind of intense version of what it is that you represent as a DJ. But evidently when you're playing 5, I mean, I'm a guy who would do residencies forever. So I was still playing weekly gigs in London a few years ago. And that meant being there at 10, finishing at 4. So for me, it's quite normal just to be able to enjoy the whole journey. And I think as a DJ, the best bit is the end bit, to have got through it. And especially that last hour when, it's the real survivors who are in there, the freaks. That's the best bit, whether the sun's coming up or not. The sun coming up's an even better bonus. But, I think for me, that is something which I've never bettered or enjoyed more. Radio's great. Radio's obviously fulfilling and you get to go deep in a different sort of a way. But when you're in the presence of people and dancers and you can kind of just see that evening happen, it's the best job in the world in a way, because you're just able to go anywhere and you can just play with the mood. I mean, that's incredible to be able to finish off a show with a McCoy Tyner track or something like that, and for people to be dancing a waltz at 4:00 in the morning is a beautiful thing. So I that's why it's funny, because when I was probably 30, I was on the radio in the UK, and I remember Francois Kevorkian was celebrating his 40th birthday, and I remember at the time thinking, there's no way I'm going to be DJing at 40. For me, that's felt so old, to me. And here I am now, 30 years later, and, I still really enjoy it. In a way, what you lose out as you become an elder is you lose out on that sort of that energy that you used to have. But what you gain is you gain wisdom about music. And so I don't know whether I'm a better DJ now than I was when I was 25 or not, but it's funny because, because there's that thing that you really get, amongst that sort of youthful energy, which is really important in the DJ set, because people relate to that, they connect with that. So if you can kind of keep that somehow, but add to that all the years of experience, of technique and space and room, because I think the other thing about DJing is never allow the beat to control you or the BPM to control you. I remember Norman J, a DJ in the UK, always used to say to me, don't allow the BPM to control you, because when it controls you, then you can't do that more aesthetic, deeper transition. So it's kind of finding that balance between technique and freedom. It's like being in a jazz band. It's like sort of, for me, the ultimate DJ equivalent where I'm at now is where I'd love to be where the orchestra were, where Sunrise Orchestra were. They could start off with a 30s kind of tribute to the big band era, and they can finish off with some cosmic electronic saxophone, Marshall Allen going at it and just tripping out at 180 BPM. That to me is, if you can get there as a DJ, then
that feels spiritual.
Yeah, that's the end goal.
Giles Peterson back in Detroit after too many years away, taking over Spot Lite all week long. It kicks off tonight with a tribute to Amp Fiddler. Tomorrow, John Dixon and Carl Craig bring the Detroit Love Experiment. It's really the Detroit Live Experiment because their band is going to be incredible on Thursday. On Friday at 6 o'clock, me and Giles will be doing a talk, talking about radio, talking about his career, talking about music. 6 o'clock at Spot Lite. And Next Gen at 9 o'clock on Friday will bring some of the best up-and-coming talents, whatever that means. People you should be listening to from the city. They will be there for the Next Gen showcase. And then on Saturday, all capped off, the legend himself, 5-hour set. Giles Peterson behind the decks. What do you want to say to people to get them to come out and come hang out?
Well, I want to say big up to Mike Banks as well and Underground Resistance, because in a way I was introduced to his music and his ideology through a group called 4 Hero, who were working with me at my label Talking Loud. And ever since really discovering his music and his way of doing things, it's been very inspiring. So hopefully he's going to pass by at one stage this week. I hope Theo comes along as well. Big up to Wajid as well, who's been such a huge, important person for this city. And Moody Man, who's an international superstar. And he is Prince. He is the Prince of dance music, and sooner or later people are going to realize that, and already they are realizing it, but I'm talking he's right up there. And all the legends, obviously Juan and Jeff Mills. Jeff Mills is still incredible what he's doing. His live show is amazing. Working, these people are just incredible.
Tomorrow Comes the Harvest is one of my favorite projects of his. Definitely check that out.
Yeah, I mean, so thank you. All I want to say is thank you, Detroit. I'm humbled to be here. I'm going to go record shopping. I had a good time. I had a good time this morning in People's Records. I've already spent half my fee.
This town is going to bankrupt you.
Yeah, I know. I just want to get I know, but no, I'm just happy to be here. I'm really excited that I've been invited to just be part of it, and I'm able to DJ. But also, most importantly of all, I can listen to everybody. And as Rula said, they're all going to be on their A game. So starting off with tonight, a big tribute to one of the most important soulful ambassadors of the world of music, Amp Fiddler. So yeah, it's going to be great to be there to celebrate his legacy tonight.
I think the best way we can bring this all together, it's obviously hard to pick a track, but we were talking about Carl Craig, we were talking about the Detroit Experiment, what he's going to be doing with John Dixon on Thursday night is going to be pretty close to what he captured on this record. And I really wanted to go off with this one, Giles. Thank you again for joining me in studio.
Thanks, Ryan.
An absolute honor. We'll see you on Friday.
Yep.
Detroit Experiment, think twice. Every time I play this, my phone blows up.
Absolutely.
What is that? You're in the groove here on WDET. Turn it up loud, Detroit. You're in the best music city on the planet.